Hello, everybody, and welcome again to today's Lean-In session. As always, I'm Michael Linke at the Australian Institute of Architects, and it's fantastic that you're spending some time with me today. This is the second session that we're really thrilled to have Stephen Brant with us. Stephen is the director or senior director at Oracle Construction and Engineering, and he's going to be spending some time with us in this Lean-In, answering our questions on how architects and how design professionals can get the most out of BIM coordination, common data environments, and digital twins. Today's session will be recorded, so if you miss any part of it, then by all means do check back on our dedicated COVID-19 response page. That'll be up live later on this afternoon. Don't forget as well, if you do have any questions for Steve, then by all means use the chat box, and I'll be highlighting that just in a few minutes as well. So if you've got any questions or comments for Stephen as he goes through this presentation, I'll go through those with Steve at the end of his presentation. So, Steve is an engineer with a 35-year career in manufacturing, in production engineering, in building and in infrastructure, life safety and construction and engineering technologies. And as I said before, he's currently a senior director at Oracle, and he's involved in operational integration and sales of product strategy, staff mentoring, customer advocacy. And I'm really thrilled that he joins me now. Steve, how are you today?
Very well. Thank you, Michael. Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me along.
Absolute pleasure. Great to have you with us. So what we'll do, Steve, without any further ado, over to you to address us on those subjects that you've mentioned: evolution of construction tech, collaboration neutrality, and the digital twin. Over to you.
That's great. Thanks, Michael. Hi, everybody. Okay, well, I've got a bit to get through today. So I'll start with the Oracle Safe Harbor statements. And all this says basically is anything I say today about future product plans shouldn't be the basis for a buying decision. Not that I'm expecting anybody to go and buy anything from us as a consequence of what I'm saying today, but it just needs to be said. As far as the agenda goes, last month I presented on a kind of a personal journey with technology since the mid-70s. And then I went into, for me, is probably the most important message that I wanted to pass on is collaboration principles and the ethics that underpin them and how they enable remote teams. And then we just touched on the new silos in design tools and emergence of the common data environment. Now, I'm going to recap on those things this morning and then go into design coordination, more about common data environments, the digital twin, and then I'm going to touch on smart cities. It's a very topical subject right now. Last time I talked about the benefits of a single platform where teams can exchange information efficiently between private workspaces, and each organization has a view into the status of things they're involved in and can drive personal accountability and hold others to task. But I asked the question, what happens if one party has absolute control over access to the system and the data in it? And I used a simple example where I introduced the terms hub and spoke and matrix architecture. And I showed that where the head contractor has paid for the system, and if their relationship with the architect, for example, in this example, becomes stressed, the architect could be summarily disconnected from the system. And at that point, they'd be unable to prove their work done to date because everything, all communications, all submissions, everything's happened on the system imposed upon the project community by the, in this example, the head contractor. And in system A, the architect would be totally disconnected from all of that work. Whereas with system B, the matrix architecture, the architect's access to the data that they've uploaded, sent, or received is maintained by the system vendor. I also made the point that privacy and security should be able to be taken for granted, but unfortunately they can't be. Credentials vary widely, especially with newer vendors. Security tends to be the thing they'll get around to once they've got the functionality all working. And these are basically things for you as an audience, as participants brought onto projects to think about and just to ask. The contractors and the owners will make their own decisions, but they're very much influenced by their advisory team, and there's nobody closer to them than the architect. And finally, reflecting on the values of trust and adoption of these tools, I shared the 5 principles of neutrality, and these are the things that you want to take a note of and ask questions about, what happens if I use this system? What's my exposure? Now, we're not alone in aiming to help the industry reduce risk and increase efficiency and quality. And the industry is trending to more centralization of more data to deliver greater insights before, during, and after asset development. So today I'm going to talk about industry trends, the inevitability of the technology direction, and what I see as a major challenge. Now, first, we're seeing an exponential increase in project data on Aconex due to a number of things: new input sources, such as the use of drones to capture site data, to the size of model files, the number of mobile applications now actively used on a site, and just the overall growth of devices that are now connected to the internet and able to capture data on projects. Secondly, there's an increased focus on BIM and project handover in the form of a digital twin at the end of a project. I know it doesn't feel like it's happening. It's something that people are saying, well, what if, could this happen? But Australian governments, particularly New South Wales, are looking to build a framework that will mandate this type of output on projects. And then finally, this explosion of information captured on projects parallels the wealth of data coming from other sources which clients want to leverage. And for us, this presents opportunities to connect them together to create something very powerful. So Aconex has a great range of capability used by the industry to deliver projects now. But customers are using many applications on projects, right? Because no one has a monopoly. So not all applications can be available from one vendor, meaning different processes are run on different applications, not integrated, resulting in fragmented data and too much admin and poor insight. There's kind of a cliche that we've got more data but no more knowledge. What Oracle's done is kind of pull these applications, these powerful core applications, into our common data environment and layered over it an API layer to facilitate useful integrations with other applications. So the data flowing from these point solutions, these examples around the outside, is captured on the platform. The platform that I've already explained sustains the principles of neutrality. Well, by the data coming from these point solutions that you really have no idea where it's going, what your ongoing access to that data will be, et cetera, is pulled into the platform and centralized there, and therefore the principle of neutrality is bestowed upon those applications. But without a standard industry language, integrations like these can be really expensive and prohibitively so for a lot of people. Now, excuse me, there's no doubting that BIM uptake has been accelerating everywhere. The industry realizes that we have to move away from information locked in containers. Just checking the chat there, excuse me. It's not a message for me, so I can press on. So the industry needs to move away from information locked in containers like drawings and technical sheets to accessible information in the form of data. And this proliferation of, or this market kind of growth has brought on an explosion in BIM-related applications. And you'll know many of these, and each one of these has got its own authentication and administration requirements, and of course data store. So we're back to kind of anything but one platform. And the lack of interoperability means that in the coordination process, issues are communicated by any number of means, ranging from emails, Excel sheets, PDF lists, and Navisworks files, and all of these need recording and actioning. They're not captured on the platform. They have no data relationships to the models themselves, and they're just about impossible to track. Now, building smart recognizes that there's, by any kind of estimate, there's tens of billions of dollars lost annually due to inadequate interoperability in industry. So this led to movement in support of the open BIM concept, and the most common and I think successful open BIM standard is Industry Foundation Class, IFC, which was developed by Building Smart. Now, Oracle's a supporter of the Open BIM initiative and actually a sponsor of the Building Smart International Group. Proprietary system manufacturers might argue that data can be lost in the transfer from native format to IFC format, but that's true more for unmapped metadata, which is controlled by the user. So let's see what Building Smart has to say about model coordination. And I'm going to start this video and just jog in a little bit because it's got a long intro. So let me just take it into about where are we going? Somewhere around here. Let's see what we get to.
Now with the CDE API, you can enable faster process and reduce cycle times. To start, let's look at the direct connection from the authoring tool to the CDE. In ArchiCAD, a model author is ready to publish an updated version of the model. They can choose to connect to Aconex and log in. Now the model updates can be seamlessly published. With a click of the button, the model is published to Aconex. Inside the CDE, the model version is available to be accessed and viewed on the project. With all the model versions ready for coordination, an analysis tool can easily access all the models. In Solibri, the models are downloaded directly from Aconex. The quality checks are then run to automatically validate and identify the results that need to be addressed. For this coordination cycle, the high priority results are raised as BCF issues. Now the BCF issues are raised, these design issues need to be distributed amongst the design team for resolution. From Solibri, the design issues are directly pushed to Aconex, with the correct assignees being notified that they have a task to action. The design issues are now available in the CDE to view, navigate, update, and report on. The issues are also available and ready to be resolved directly in the authoring tool. In ArchiCAD, the same issues are viewed and the model author can be taken to the exact location with a single click. The design issues are resolved and the issues updated directly within ArchiCAD with any additional comments. At this point, the entire design team is aware of the progress of the coordination. To complete the coordination cycle, the updated models are reviewed in Solibri to ensure the checks are now resolved. With the CDE API, projects can seamlessly manage the flow of models during coordination. To find out more, join the working group, meeting every second Monday.
I hope that you can work at that speed. The expectation is that people can zap around. Okay, I see some questions coming in, which I'll get to at the end. I can see, yes, hope people can get through their work the speed that that video was accelerated to. So anyway, let's just cover what you just saw. Basically, the advantage of interoperability. So model IFC files were published as new revisions to the Oracle CDE, where they were available not only to the design team, but to whoever would benefit from accessing and commenting on them. There they were federated and reviewed and directly accessed by Navis or Solibri for clash and quality review, etc. And issues were published as BCF files back to the CDE, where they are captured and displayed in a management dashboard as data. And snapshot images, etc. Now, once the resolutions were agreed, the IFCs were published back to the design team for updates to the models. So this flow just makes life so much easier for people, but it's interoperability that allows it. And to do that, it's standardized plugins so that these groups are no longer kept separate. The design team and the rest of the project team are working more holistically as one. Now, as this process iterates, it's all captured in the model, as is other data collected by the CDE, such as asset information, as-built, some commissioning and maintenance data. And at the end of the day, we're creating the digital twin of the asset. And as soon as we connect the systems from the built asset back into the model, we have a system comprised of the real world and a computational model where users can interact. And artificial intelligence can enable the digital twin to perform tasks with minimal or no human oversight. And so this leap I just talked through there is the necessary enablement for what is just captured data to a system, an interactive system that can do work. Rapid advances in these technologies are affecting us in every area of our lives, not just in construction. The Internet of Things is real. Cloud computing is absolutely real. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are genuinely here and being used. Look, to be honest, for a while, in my early, Oracle acquired Aconex 3 years ago. In the first months, we had a lot to do and a lot to think about. But as I began to surface and look more at what Oracle had to offer Aconex, because it was all about what Aconex had to offer Oracle, Oracle's got some pretty neat software and some pretty cool technology. And, I'm focused on the construction industry. So what have they got that can help us to improve our product and help our clients in more ways? And Larry Ellison talks a lot about artificial intelligence and autonomous databases, autonomous cloud. And I questioned that, to be honest. I asked a number of people, is this real or is it elaborate marketing? And absolutely, the feedback I got is this is real. They've spent hundreds of millions developing this capability, and artificial intelligence will be embedded into all of their products, including our products, in the not too distant future. So it's kind of exciting. Thinking about that, artificial intelligence and machine learning, they can inspire different ways of thinking, and you can imagine opportunities. And so it's not hard to conceive how the city of the future will actually work. There'll be decreasing land availability, so increased vertical growth. There'll be smart and integrated mobility, highly specialized healthcare systems, educational systems adapted to change in labor, recreational options, and more leisure time. It's quite exciting, the immersion into mixed reality that we've seen, like shopping, smart energy and local production. But again, to realize this, we need more connections than can be achieved with our digital twin alone. So, we've been asking ourselves, how can we help? How can we get onto this track and use our capabilities, and what can we do to drive this towards this future? Now, I mentioned that Oracle's a supporter of the Open BIM initiative, and we're actually members of the Strategic Advisory Council, where we're working on several projects related to interoperability in common data environments and the digital twin. So the team you can see here focused on, they conducted a study on what an ecosystem of digital twins would look like. And here, second from the right, you can see our Frank Weiss, head of innovation, Uli Hartmann next to him, and several thought leaders are there from like Siemens, Mott MacDonald, Cambridge Centre of Digital, Built Britain, and others. So their white paper that they produce lays out the vision, and I'm going to share some of this with you today. So a digital twin is a system, and obviously to contribute to the work of other digital twins, we need to facilitate the flow of data out of and into the system. Now, our industry's data contribution through this cycle would have been related to the development of a new asset. But on commissioning, the systems added to the built environment and data related to the use and operation of the system begin to flow. And that data exchange continues over the asset life all the way until the decommissioning of that asset, and in an ideal world would be able to inform its redevelopment. Not like today where you get to look at a redevelopment and you're given next to nothing to start with. Now, Mark Enzer of Mott MacDonald produced a set of infographics of the digital built environment in his work for the Centre for Digital Built Britain, which has been foundational for the Building Smart working groups. And in those working groups, they've adopted Mark's thinking here. So, each critical element of infrastructure is in itself a system. So that includes transport systems, energy systems, telecoms, water and waste systems, social infrastructure such as prisons, hospitals, emergency services, the RTA, and the network that employs and houses us, and the way all of this fits into, influences and sustains the natural environment. So behind every piece of infrastructure in the built environment is a system, or I should say a digital twin, already there. These pieces of the environment, these infrastructure have their digital twin existing now. There's data being collected, there's data feeding and driving them. It already exists. It's not like we've got to create them. It's a system of services, a system of systems, a cyber physical system, and a sustainability system. Now, we just need to enable these digital twins to exchange more data in real time and aim towards the principle of continuous improvement, as I mentioned earlier, because data facilitates insights, which supports decisions, allowing for interventions and measurable outcomes. So that is an active digital twin, and when we connect digital twins together, they can share their data, creating a broader understanding and informing better decisions. And coordination of services becomes a natural phenomena, and being aware of and adapting to new circumstances much easier. Latency is reduced, and waste is eliminated. And another thread that we're working on is examining just how 5G, how profound the influence of 5G will be on this model, on these digital twins and their ability to act without latency. And just imagine in this connected city, the authorities at a moment's notice, knowing which hospitals have capacity to handle a disaster, or how far a fire has travelled in a cityscape. Or more importantly, imagine knowing as you approach your destination where the next available parking spot is. So the possibilities, they really are endless. What is a digital twin? And there have been many attempts to define what a digital twin is, and this is the definition adopted by Oracle. And you obviously need this so that we know what we're aiming for. Now, in a smart city, there will be more than just one type of digital twin. There have been identified component versus asset. The digital twins will know what they are, and they'll have certain behavioral characteristics that are expected to show. And when they don't, then others can detect those changes in behavior as well as they can, and you've got faster reaction to things going wrong. One of the things that Oracle's working on is what are the things you need. What are the main requirements for a digital twin? And so one thing we know is you need inputs. So from the physical domain, such as installation and cost detail and sensor data, etc., etc. But to store and process these inputs, you need scalable technology in the form of databases and computing capacity for big data, and the ability to learn and drive continuous improvement. So, those are that's the more challenging side. Obviously, Oracle already supports the construction, Internet of Things and business process side with household brand products, which many of you will know about. But it'll be no surprise then that Oracle can deliver several of the major components required for an ecosystem of digital twins, which is super exciting for us because it's just pulling the company together. It's a very big company with lots of departments, but they're all working towards a similar sort of database future. And we're starting to see how we can combine to be greater than the sum of our parts. And one of the ways we're doing that is through a concept called the Innovation Lab. And so we have in Chicago an Industry Innovation Lab, started 2 years ago with the plan at that time to expand, if it was successful, into kind of a phase 2. And the concept of these labs is to have an environment in which these technologies can be tested. The Innovation Lab 1 in Chicago was so successful that Innovation Lab 2 is already under construction. Obviously, the project team is using the Oracle CDE and many of the other tools in our ecosystem that I showed you in one of the earlier slides. And so that's that project about 4 weeks ago, the stage that it was at. And that's, as I said, quite exciting. But probably even more exciting is that the Sydney lab has been funded, and construction's about to commence here in North Ryde in Sydney, right outside the Oracle building. And I'm currently talking to local innovators to bring them into the project and have more of a regional bent to the innovation. I guess it's a laboratory to the pushing the boundaries of what can be done. So that's very exciting project, and it's a construction site or a working site or a working model, but it's away from the client's environment. I mean, you can't go and start testing these kind of technologies on an active construction site with a crane swinging around over your head. But this is a safe place to do it. So it's a great project to be involved in. Okay, so when it comes to the smart city, as much as governments may drive industry to execute on the vision or to work towards it, to push towards it, my mind turns to trust, which probably won't surprise you based on the core subject of my presentation. Who can and should be trusted to host a city's substantial and continuously expanding digital estate? How can it be a commercial entity? And it got me wondering if perhaps there's a place here for libraries to be reborn, to again play a central role in hosting and sharing the intellectual property, both that in the public domain and that that's owned and offered to be shared. I don't know, it's just a thought. I really hope that we can solve this difficult question if we want to realize the goal of all this technology. So I'm going to share a video, a relatively short video, just a few more minutes to go in this presentation, from Bolado, and see what you think of his thoughts to the purpose of technology, because I think it sums up absolutely why we're trying to build the ecosystem of connected digital twins, and thereby build the smart city.
Whenever we open our eyes, we never see what's there. We only ever see what was useful to see in the past. I'm Bolado, and I'm a professor of neuroscience at University College London, and I study perception and how the brain makes meaning. Perception is basically a story. Objects in the real world don't come with a meaning. They don't come with an instruction manual. They don't tell you what to do. If you take a dark stimulus, it could mean an infinite combination of reflectance and illumination. You have no idea which. That could either be a surface that's under shadow, because there's less light hitting it, so there's less light reflected from that surface to your eye, or it could be a hole. It could actually generate the very same stimulus, but you have no way of knowing from the stimulus itself. So what happened through evolution is some of our ancestors would walk forward, and if it were a hole, they'd step in it and they'd be selected out, whereas others would walk around. Those with the brains that walked around, they stayed alive. Whatever they saw, that's what we now see. We inherited their perceptions. So as those events and experiences build up, our story gets more and more complex. Now, these stories can have two bases. Either they are things that literally happened. They are truly physically experiential, but they can also be events that happen in our minds. We can imagine. And what's remarkable is when we imagine something, it activates the same part of our brain as if we're actually seeing it. So an imagined perception is the same as a real perception. This has tremendous impact for thinking about the narratives that a culture tells itself. Being social is fundamental to who you are. If you're excommunicated from your group, you died. So it's hugely important for us to belong. One consequence of that is that we will come to see differences between people. But through the power of narrative, we can actually change those biases. We can tell a different story, and we have. For me, the best technologies make the invisible visible.
Thank you, Bolado. So that, I think, is what we're trying to do through all these connections, through all this communication, through the digital twins sharing their outputs. It's enabling us to see the things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to see and act on them. And it's no coincidence that the Oracle mission statement, this is from Larry Ellison himself, is to do exactly that. So it kind of does wrap up what I wanted to share with you today. I got finished a bit earlier than I thought. So I thought it might be another 5 or 6 minutes, but I spoke at a decent pace, I think. So I'm happy to entertain any questions or provide more detail in any area.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephen. You've had a lot of questions come through, quite a lot. So let's get cracking with them if that's all right. I suppose the first one really is a good question from Gareth. And Gareth says, look, the Uniclass 2015 is being increasingly adopted by government agencies in Australia. Does Oracle incorporate this classification system within their product range?
Yep, we know Uniclass very well. Oracle's very much a supporter of open standards and not proprietary standards. And the Building Smart group are also working on a classification standard that is non-proprietary. So the Uniclass folks are pushing me very hard right now to integrate their Chorus system in with CDE at the Innovation Lab. So we don't want to exclude anybody at all from these communication streams, but we're very keen to see how quickly Building Smart could bring to the fore their open standard in that respect. And so I guess watch this space, or we're watching that space.
Great, thank you. When the video is playing, the first video, in relation to the workflow, Matt has come onto the chat and asked a really good question. He says, look, is that workflow available in Revit as it is in ArchiCAD with Solibri and Aconex?
We're just about to announce it. Good question. You heard it first.
Okay.
So yes, the Revit integration is just about to happen. I think I'm probably stepping it down, or shoot me later. No, but yes. How's that?
Okay, great stuff. So you heard it here first. So Revit will be in there shortly.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a follow-up question on that. And in uploading to Aconex compared to, say, BIM 360 is quite a long process. Is there a published or some sort of feature on the roadmap for Aconex where the process can take less time and be less manual?
Yes, definitely. One of the reasons that it's more involved is that so Aconex is a metadata-based platform, not a folder-based platform. As you know, it's ever so easy to just push something into a folder and it thereby attains the attributes of that folder, as opposed to when you're uploading, choosing which metadata tags you want that thing to have. Now, it means that it's very easy to extract detail out of Aconex, and you can choose which values you want to keep, how much of the identifying data you want for that thing. Putting things into Aconex is more involved because of the reason I just said. We have a DCC team working right now, so that's the name of the team, working right now. And again, we have a release coming, which is going to make it super easy to upload to effectively virtual folders so that you can put things in much more easily. So you saw that in that Building Smart demonstration of model coordination, there were plugins which made it possible to push stuff in and out of Aconex quite quickly and easily. But when it's a case of uploading something from your desktop, yes, we appreciate that it's more involved, and it's fine for an oil and gas project or for a mining project where they absolutely have to have 100% control and multiple identifying factors on any piece of information. But for regular projects, it's rather complex. So yeah, we're addressing it soon.
Okay, soon, hopefully. Good stuff.
Yeah, no, it isn't something that I'm saying, it's a kind of imminent in inverted commas, and then you wait 2 years. It's going to happen in, weeks to months at the most.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks, Stephen. A message from Chris on the chat. He says, look, the New South Wales government has initiated a spatial digital twin program. You're aware of that. How will your digital twin incorporate into the New South Wales initiative?
Yes, so it's early days with that. I haven't gone much further than a couple of meetings with the head of the building commissioner and what they're looking for. There is a large group of people working on that. We've got people in Oracle who are on the technical side who are closer. These things are long journeys. I don't know where we're at with it, to be honest, but we're active. We're aware of what's going on. We're kind of looking at, globally, these things are happening, and we're trying to establish the higher level capabilities. And perhaps what I'm trying to say is we're trying to establish a global working model for many government bodies to follow, rather than each of them taking their own different approach, because that could just about make it impossible for any vendor to support.
Correct. This is an interesting question from Tom on the chat, and he says, look, are you expecting architects, I know you're expecting engineers to become the managers of these digital twins over the lifetime of the system? Who maintains it?
That's a good question. In fact, they're all good questions. One of the things we did with model coordination in Aconex was democratize BIM. That was kind of the goal for us. It was owned by one group. We wanted to make it accessible and communicable to and between other members in the construction group. At the end of the day, there will be a BIM manager, for want of another expression. I know that's probably a dirty word to use, phrase to use, but there has to be somebody responsible at the end of the day for coordination. And whoever that person is, what we're saying is that the model doesn't have to be owned on a platform that's controlled by an individual, which again can dispute your input to that model. We've got law firms making a living at the moment on the track, going around the country, explaining to people like your audience here, the risks of moving into a BIM-related design environment. There are exposures that you're now facing because you no longer send them a drawing and say, this is my input. You're now contributing in a model that someone else is hosting and owns, and where's the proof? So, my message is very much about, we can do that. We can maintain the neutrality and maintain. There's no reason for these law firms to be beating the tracks on these subjects. Will engineers have more input? Definitely. We democratize, we make it available. Will they run and own and operate the models? I can't say how it'll land. It needs to be somebody on the project. That's all I can say.
Let's quickly just talk about the editing side of things. So an interesting question has come through on the chat, and it's talking about editable digital twins. So how do you update digital twins when say one of our members or a number of our members are using and relying on IFC that isn't editable? What's your answer to that?
So again, there's the authoring tools that will edit the models. The idea is that you send the changes that are required back to the people using the authoring tools. So actually, you'd be sending, BCF data comes in, and they can import those directly into the IFC as kind of markups that can then go back to the people responsible for authoring to make the changes. So yes, you won't actually edit the IFCs in Aconex.
Right.
They'll be kind of like markups or annotations.
Okay. A question from Josh, and he says, look, a lot of the tools presented seem to target the authoring, the validating and the coordinating process of the design team. And Josh says, look, he's heavily invested in BIM via ArchiCAD in the residential realm. And notice that while the builder is within that umbrella, their trades and their manufacturers generally aren't included in that, which necessitates, easier PDF, simplified documentation, etc. So have you got any open tools or formats that link the digital twin to what Josh calls the real world, CNC flatbeds and so on?
So I understand that. Look, I had a home renovation a couple of years ago, and I had it modelled. I had the BIM model made, and I arrived on site with the builder and his two assistants with my iPad, which is kind of obscured by the virtual background. And I opened the model and said, okay, look, maybe we can work with the model here. And I rotated it on the iPad and turned it around, and he had conniptions and said, if we're going in that direction, I'm out of here. And I don't blame him. No, that's fine. Again, democratizing BIM means making it available downstream, and that people can use Aconex without an additional fee. Right? It's paid for by one party; everybody else gets to use it without a fee, and then they can use their iPad and they can take the model with them, and they can zoom and measure and do all those good things on site. But I appreciate that at the end of the day, most of the time still there's a drawing in the back of a ute. Right? That's how stuff gets built. And you can choose your own views and print them out. You can, I don't know that we are going to add the creation of drawings from the model into Aconex. I think there will be the ability, though, to take any view of the model and print it out, or save it or email it. That exists now. And so I understand. I absolutely agree. Look, my presentation was very much high level. It was very much about the future and where we're going. And I did show just in a bubble the model coordination process to show how interoperability is working. But I'm absolutely grounded in the real world, and I agree. And I say this to people regularly in Oracle. At the end of the day, there's a drawing in the back of a ute. That's my expression. I tell them that you've got to get down to the guy drilling the holes. And he's not going to be fumbling around with a model. But we think eventually we will. We think eventually we'll go there because there's so much more information available to us. And that's why we want to democratize the model, make it available to more people. It's kind of a long-winded answer, but that's where we're aiming. We're hoping we can take the industry with us.
What would your response be to people that are concerned about, sort of intellectual property and their personal data being sold? And this is a question from Andrew. He's come through on the chat and he says, look, all of this data storage, the computation, the retention, all costs money. That we accept. How do we balance the checkbook, he asks, without trading or selling even more personal data to the Googles of this world, the Amazons, the eBays, whoever it might be? And how do we communicate data collection to what he's termed the smart citizen, who really can't opt out of tracking if the smart city really is implemented in a holistic way?
Yeah. So we had a lot of rules at Aconex about what you could and couldn't do. For example, I won't use names, but a tier one builder calls us and says, I'd like to know how much one of my subbies is actually using Aconex. Are they using it? What are they using this tool, which I've told them they really should be using? Can you? And our response is, no, we can't tell you that. That's nothing to do with you. You enable it. You give these tools to these companies, but we have a relationship with each of them. They're not your subbies. They're industry subbies. It's not your architect. We have a relationship with that architect on dozens of projects. So we had rules, and we followed those rules. And of course, GDPR has impacted us all. The European rules about general data protection, and in particular PII, personally identifiable information. And so we had to change some of our practices around that. We were still nothing compared to Oracle. Oracle is scared to death of a breach, absolutely scared to death. And that's because I may have mentioned it in the first presentation, but Aconex was a household name in Australia. You walk into a cafe, somebody asks you where you work, and they say, oh, my brother works in construction. He's mentioned Aconex. But it was nothing on the global scale compared to Oracle, and it was the hacker community wouldn't get recognized for hacking Aconex. We'd hate it to have happened, but and it could damage our business, but it would destroy Oracle's share price if they were hacked. And they are scared to death about it. So they have so many tight rules around security. And that's why, in the kind of the digital city model, the smart city model, they've got a security layer. And that's why Oracle thinks they've got to play there as well, because they've got so much stuff about security, but also policies and processes internally. But you can't be sure that everybody's got these rules, and some of the best have been breached. I mean, there was a breach of Twitter this morning. I read a whole bunch of folks, and Bill Gates and others. Look, it happens, and it usually happens because somebody's asleep at the wheel. They're not patching immediately. They're not doing all these things. And at the end of the day, those people, those organizations who are breached, they suffer. But how can we guarantee to protect? I mean, nobody will sign a rock solid guarantee to consequential losses if their system is breached by malpractice or malfeasance. So these are challenges for the community, and not just not just big business. And in fact, it's for technology to address them. They can't leave it to the community to address. And we're working on that kind of stuff all the time. People within Oracle they're not allowed to see stuff that other groups are working on, or the people who develop our software are not allowed to deploy or administer it. There's kind of these walls that say, well, if you're the developer, you might get up to something within the product that you then deploy, and so we can't let that happen. So we separate that, and these people check what you develop before they deploy, and all those things. When we get into this larger world, the smart city, all of these data stores, all of this personally identifiable information, it's particularly challenging in places like Europe and Germany, where Oracle has training resources for its staff, but our German colleagues don't have to do them because they can't enforce it, because there are rules around that. Their unions are so strong, we can't use their names in lists, and that's even within the company. Yeah, these are big challenges, ethical challenges, and I don't have the answers to them, but we are aware of them and we're thinking them through.
A question from Hamish once again on the chat, and he's talking about data poverty, and the question he raises is, how will these democratized models work in locations that are experiencing data poverty?
And so do we mean poor internet, so we can't access them?
Hamish hasn't gone on. Hamish will hopefully follow up with a line on the chat just to confirm his question in slightly more detail.
That's okay.
But answer it from that point of...
Yeah, we're aware that there are. I mean, look, there are locations around the world. There are locations in Australia where people will have difficulty having a consistent connection. So digital data poverty, was it high cost?
Low bandwidth. So he's talking about stuff. Yeah.
Yes, a high cost to have bandwidth to be able to do these things. That's a great question. And so, look, a couple of things to that. You shouldn't need high bandwidth to access a platform and drive it. So if we look at email, if I send an email to you, Michael, the email will go into your email server in your business or your home or in your ISP, and it will sit there and chew away for as long as it takes for the attachments to go down the pipe until finally they're available and can come down your pipe to your computer. And that's, if I want to transmit this, say 20 megabytes of data to you, you've got to wait to receive that 20 megabytes of data at your end, or 200 meg or 2 terabytes, whatever it might be. With a platform, and like Aconex and others, these transmissions occur on the platform and don't have to go down the pipe to you until you need to pull it down. So you can see that it's there. You can see that you've received it. It's in your file store, in the Aconex case, your secure file store. At that point, it's yours and nobody can take it away from you. And even if the client stops paying for the service for that project, we will let you know that that client has stopped paying. We will give you the opportunity to choose whether you want to keep it online or buy the offline archive. And we talked about that on the last meeting, and questions were asked about pricing of offline archives of Aconex data. So I'll just finish this and I'll come back to that. And so, I often had people say, what bandwidth is required to use Aconex? And I would say, a hell of a lot less than you need to run email. You only need to download the data you need to download. Now, there are environments where people have to use satellite link, for web connections. It's horrendously expensive. But, it was kind of the same when we started building roads. People said, well, I can't afford a car. What's the advantage of a road to me? And eventually, these resources, as I'd call them, essential services, are democratized. They become available to more and more people. Now, Aconex has a service called Scheduled Archive. It's a piece of software that a user can install on their computer. It connects to Aconex every night and downloads whatever happened during the day overnight. So it's available to them the next day. So that's available to participants. All these things have a fee. Back to that subject of fee, I did take up I think I may have mentioned that I was already looking at the pricing of archives, and I'd reduced it quite a lot for larger archives because it became quite expensive for very large projects. But the question that one of the members asked was, what about the smaller architect working on Aconex, and then they've got to pay several $100s for an archive of their data, their contribution to that project? I wasn't facetious enough to say that could be small fry compared to the cost of a litigation. And I don't mean that either. I mean, it could be, but it may well not be. There go the puppies that I thought might fire up at some point today. We are just about to go into operational integration at Oracle. So Aconex has been through 3 stages. The final stage is in October. Everything is in lockdown, our own form of lockdown at that point. I can't change anything in the pricing, but I have a general sympathy to my response to that member's question, and I am going to address it, and we're going to have another level below the minimum level of archive, because many of these, it starts at I think around sorry, I can't remember, it's 200 meg or something, and many of them are smaller than that, and we're going to have a lower cost level for participants and smaller.
Okay. All right, Steve, we may leave it there if that's okay. Time is getting away from us, but we gave you some pretty hard and difficult questions there, and you answered them really well. So thank you so much. It takes a lot of courage to come in front of a group of fantastic architects and present something like this. And of course, we're going to challenge you with some questions that are somewhat difficult. But thanks very much for your honesty and your collaboration and your efforts today in pulling that together, Steve, Brant, and thank you very much. We'll let you get back to your new dogs, which are crying out for attention. But it's great to always spend time with you, Steve. So thanks very much.
Thanks all the members. It was good fun.
No worries at all. A pleasure to have you as always. So what we'll now do, that's it for the rest of the lean-in for today. It has been great to spend some time with you. As always, I've been Michael Linke here at the Institute of Architects. And don't forget, next Tuesday at 12 noon, log in and join me again. We're going to be talking to Scott Burrows. Scott is a very well-respected and well-known architectural photographer, and he's going to be giving you some tips about really how to work in the intellectual property fields and how best to work with architectural photographers, some tips and tricks on how to collaborate with a photographer and show your projects off to the best of their ability. So a slightly different theme than what we've done today, but interesting nonetheless. So that's it. Obviously, if you wanted to record or watch any recordings of our previous sessions, they are available on our dedicated COVID-19 resource page as well. So until next week, stay safe, and I'll look forward to seeing you again at a future lean-in session. Have a great day.